Snowman, directed by Tomas Alfredson. He also directed Let the Right One In, and it's based on the novel of the same name. I'm a massive fan of Let the Right One In. An amazing movie. If you've not seen it, check it out. So we've got Michael Fassbender, who plays the lead character, Harry Hole. He's a detective, the best actually on the Oslo police force. But he's a character with issues. He's a very flawed character. So he ends up investigating the disappearance of a victim who's been taken by a killer that just really likes to leave snowmen at the crime scene. And he finds out that this killer has been active for quite a few years, so he's going to try and get all the sort of clues and pieces of the puzzle, connect them all together to try and work out who this killer is. Who just is this killer that just loves leaving snowmen at the crime scene. I was actually really looking forward to checking this film out. I mean, it's got a good cast. You've got Fassbender, Kilmer, J.K. Simmons, and it's got a really good director attached. So this movie had a lot of potential of being quite a good, compelling crime thriller. And I was hoping for something along the lines of Seven, David Fincher's Seven. And by watching this movie, you can clearly see that Tomas Alfredson was clearly inspired by the work of David Fincher. Unfortunately, this really wasn't compelling in the slightest. It actually failed to capture my attention, and I found it very difficult to watch, all for the wrong reasons. This was no Seven. The biggest problem for me with this film, The Snowman, was its storytelling. The narrative. It's filled with different layers of story. For example, you've got flashback sequences. You've got J.K. Simmons' character leading a bid for Oslo to win the Winter Sports World Cup. You've got the main investigation story. And then you've also got Fassbender's character's sort of own story and relationship with an ex and a child. So there was a lot going on, and the way it was done was just a big mess. And they failed to connect all these different pieces of story together cohesively. And as a result, the narrative becomes very messy and muddled and confusing, and it really didn't need to be. And as a result, it becomes very difficult to follow the story. And as a result, the revelations also fail to make any sort of impact. So when something is revealed all of a sudden and it's meant to shock, it just doesn't. It falls flat and feels empty. I do feel like the outcome in this movie during the third act, the climax, was very flat and underwhelming as a result of this very messy and muddled narrative. And it was actually quite predictable as well. This was a very predictable movie, and I did actually guess who the killer was quite early on in the film. I was actually surprised that this film was directed by Tomas Alfredson. I was quite shocked while watching it. You would never have guessed this. This film was brought to us by the man who directed Let the Right One In. The climax to this film was so badly executed. It had no tension. The first 5 minutes of the movie was the way that the first 5 minutes was put together was just really, really shoddy. And I get the connection that they made with the killer and the snowman. And of course it's psychological. But how they connected it and how they showed why, there is this connection, it was just done very cheaply. It's shown in the first 5 minutes, and I just felt the way it was done, the way it was executed was just done very, very cheaply and lazy as well. I mean, this film felt overall very lazy, as if Alfredson just didn't really care for the material. And the intro, which basically explores the origins of the killer, was done so badly. It was executed really, really badly. The editing and the way it was shot, it just threw you out, and it happened so quickly. Like, this was a moment which was supposed to, get you immersed and get you invested into this story and the character. But it was done so quickly and cheaply. It just didn't work. It failed. I mean, this was a moment where it should have added, added substance and depth to the villain, and actually sort of get, why this villain have some sort of feeling, you could say, or emotionally, for why the villain ends up doing what he's doing, and it just doesn't work. The way the scene just plays out, the pacing, everything about that opening scene was done it was just very, very bad. And again, as a result of that, when the revelation does come in the third act, it's like, oh, okay then, you just don't care. Well, I didn't anyway. And that pretty much sums up my feelings, really, and, how I felt while I was experiencing this film, this story. I just didn't care. I wasn't emotionally involved or immersed into this film and story. Just the entire way this film was crafted just felt very sort of uninspired, very lazy. And so even though you can see that Alfredson was clearly inspired by David Fincher's work, it felt more like a rip-off of David Fincher's work, like Seven, than anything else. It just didn't... It just came across like he was ripping him off, and that was it, sort of thing. It was a very, very sort of poor attempt at trying to sort of replicate those type of movies like Seven and Zodiac, and you could see that he was inspired by that work, but he just couldn't quite get it to that level when it comes to this movie, The Snowman. And the characters were just not developed enough for you to actually care for them. And I really wanted to care for Fassbender's character, but I just couldn't. And it's in films like this, in stories like this, that you really need to care for the characters. You need to be invested emotionally into the story and characters, but it just fails. It just really does fail to even do that. And again, a sort of a knock-on effect with the character development within the film ends up resulting in a scene that ends up being quite awkward. It's a very random scene, I thought, but I think that's just the way in which it was sort of, as a result of the way the film was crafted and with the lack of character development. But there's a very awkward non-sex scene in this film, and it was awkward to watch. It was weird, but it's like, again, I just didn't know enough about the characters to really care about what was going on in this scene. And again, this scene was supposed to affect you emotionally, and because I didn't care for the characters, it just has resulted in being a very random, awkward scene. Performance-wise, everyone was okay. I think for me, Fassbender was okay, but I think this is probably his blandest performance that I've ever witnessed, and I'm a massive fan of Fassbender. But same goes for everyone. Performance-wise, everyone was just okay. There was nothing really special when it comes to performances. No one really stood out. Though I will say, I sort of liked Val Kilmer's character. He's involved with the flashbacks, and I kind of liked what he did with the character. But yeah, nothing really sort of special. If anything, Fassbender seemed very sort of bored and sort of like, I don't know, he just didn't seem to be that involved and immersed into the role, this character that he was playing. And as a result, for me anyway, he just came across as a okay performance. And the same goes for everyone else. So yeah, actually, again, it sums up this film. It wasn't compelling. It failed to capture my attention. I found it very boring and a very bland film. And it was just very, very, the way this movie was crafted and put together, down to the editing and all of that, it was just very, very messy, and it really didn't need to be. They just really failed to sort of knit those pieces together, those different layers of story together, and maybe we would have had something that was a bit more compelling. But I did actually really like something about the film, mind, and that was the soundtrack, the music, which was composed by Marco Beltrami. I really dug the music in the film. It really sort of tried to carry and lift this story, this very muddled and messy narrative, and it tried its best to sort of lift it and carry the film. But it sort of just stood out, actually, to me, as being actually the best aspect of this movie. I really liked the music. I think it really captured the tone that Alfredson was trying to aim for, but sort of failed. It's a shame, actually, come to think of it, because the more I think about it, yeah, the soundtrack was actually really, really good, and it really tried to give this film an identity and a character. And it was sort of different, and there was elements of the soundtrack that reminded me a little bit of Alfred Hitchcock. But yeah, unfortunately, overall, the way the film was crafted just really wasn't. It just failed on all sort of levels, and it failed to compel me, which is a shame because I've never read the novel, so I can't compare this to the novel. But it looked like something I would enjoy. So I love David Fincher's work. I love his movies like Seven, and Silence of the Lambs and all of that. So I was hoping this would be on the same sort of level, especially with the director attached to it. Tomas Alfredson. I mean, you got a film like he directed Let the Right One In, and that climax is the tension in that climax and the way in which it was crafted was beautiful. And then you've got this, where the climax was just flat, felt very uninspired, very bland, and well, yeah, you get the gist. I just didn't think it was a very good film. Quite disappointed, actually. So yeah, they are my thoughts of The Snowman. I will be giving it a D. What did you guys think of The Snowman? Do you agree or disagree with my views? Let me know below. And again, thanks so much for watching. I really do appreciate it. And if you like what you see and you share the same passions, then why not hit subscribe?